and Namibia. What does the Bank of Namibia do for you and Namibia? Also known as the Central Bank of Namibia, the bank makes sure that banking and financial institutions under its supervision are safe, sound, and able to withstand any shocks. One of the ways the bank does this is by supervising commercial banks. The Bank of Namibia monitors the national payment and settlement system to make sure that our transactions are safe, legal, cost-effective, and timely. The bank also facilitates payments between people as they transact through various commercial banks. The bank ensures a stable supply of good quality banknotes and coins within the country. The Bank of Namibia makes sure that prices of goods and services in the economy do not increase too quickly, keeping the value of the Namibian dollar stable, whether it is in your pocket or bank. The Bank of Namibia provides banking services to commercial banks and government. As banker to the government, the bank is responsible for processing government payments domestically and internationally. The bank also manages Namibia's foreign reserves, allowing us to pay for imports. The Bank of Namibia is responsible for the regulation of inflow and outflow of foreign currency. This assists in the overall management of foreign reserves. The Bank of Namibia fulfills these functions to support economic growth and development. What does the Bank of Namibia do for you and Namibia? Also known as the Central Bank of Namibia, the bank makes sure that banking and financial institutions under its supervision are safe, sound, and able to withstand any shocks. One of the ways the bank does this is by supervising commercial banks. The Bank of Namibia monitors the national payment and settlement system to make sure that our transactions are safe, legal, cost-effective, and timely. The bank also facilitates payments between people as they transact through various commercial banks. The bank ensures a stable supply of good quality banknotes and coins within the country. The Bank of Namibia makes sure that prices of goods and services in the economy do not increase too quickly, keeping the value of the Namibian dollar stable, whether it is in your pocket or bank. The Bank of Namibia provides banking services to commercial banks and government. As banker to the government, the bank is responsible for processing government payments domestically and internationally. The bank also manages Namibia's foreign reserves, allowing us to pay for imports. The Bank of Namibia is responsible for the regulation of inflow and outflow of foreign currency. This assists in the overall management of foreign reserves. The Bank of Namibia fulfills these functions to support economic growth and development. What does the Bank of Namibia do for you and Namibia? Also known as the Central Bank of Namibia, the bank makes sure that banking and financial institutions under its supervision are safe, sound, and able to withstand any shocks. One of the ways the bank does this is by
Good morning, Governor. Governor Gavachab, Deputy Governor Dunn, Officer in Charge Mr. Masuri Ikwa, Monetary Policy Committee members, management and staff of the Bank of Namibia, members of the media, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning and welcome to the first monetary policy announcement for 2025. We are delighted to welcome our media practitioners and wish to thank you for honoring our invitation to join us today. We also wish to extend a warm welcome to our online viewers and those tuning into the broadcast coming to you live from the Bank of Namibia auditorium. Over the past 2 days, the Monetary Policy Committee, chaired by the Governor of the Bank of Namibia, convened to discuss and determine the appropriate monetary policy stance for the country for the next 2 months. A decision was reached yesterday, and the Governor will announce and unpack it shortly. Thereafter, we will welcome questions from the media practitioners in the room. Those will be the proceedings for the morning. Once again, welcome. My name is Nafiku Hamunime, and I work for the bank's Strategic Communications Department. With those introductions out of the way, let me now welcome the Governor of the Bank of Namibia, Mr. Johannes Gavachab, to deliver the first monetary policy announcement for 2025. Governor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nathuku, and let me extend a hearty welcome to you all. Good morning. Before I deliver the policy announcement, I would like to say a few words. As we all are aware, the nation is currently observing a period of mourning following the passing of the father of the Namibian nation, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma. The solemn moment calls for reflection on his pivotal role, not only in the liberation struggle, but also in laying the foundation for the country's economic progress through the establishment of institutions, including the Bank of Namibia. In 1988, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma, then the President of SWAPO, played a pivotal role in securing assistance from Sweden. He personally engaged Prime Minister Olof Palme to garner support for the liberation movement in establishing a future central bank for Namibia. Alongside His Excellency Vikpunja Pohamba, who served as the Secretary of Finance, Dr. Nujoma met with Mr. Erik Lennart Carlson, a Swedish banking expert nominated by Prime Minister Palme, to explore Namibia's proposed economic framework and the establishment of its central bank. This crucial discussion laid the seeds for what is now known as the Bank of Namibia. In short, the contributions of the Swedes were instrumental in the formation of the bank, with Mr. Carlson initially serving as a deputy governor and subsequently as the second governor of the Bank of Namibia. As we mark 35 years of central banking, during which we have consistently prioritized promoting monetary and financial stability to advance economic development, we acknowledge that our achievements have only been possible through the contributions of those who came before us. We pay tribute to our founding president and the father of the nation, mourning not only the loss of a great leader, but of the very soul of our young republic. He was a steadfast general who secured liberty, the wise statesman who shaped our union, and the servant who placed country above self. Indeed, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Though he now rests, his legacy will guide us as surely as the North Star led him through the storms of revolution and governance. On behalf of all the employees of the Bank of Namibia, on behalf of the management, on behalf of the Board of Namibia, Bank of Namibia, fare thee well, noble patriot. Your deeds shall never fade from the heart of Namibia. As we move forward, we will continue to uphold and honor your legacy by working diligently to build the prosperity of our nation for the benefit of all Namibians. I thank you for that part. Let me now get to monetary policy. The mandate of the bank is monetary and financial stability. On the 10th and 11th of February 2025, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Namibia held its bi-monthly meeting of 2025 to decide on the appropriate monetary policy stance for the next 2 months. To continue supporting the domestic economy while safeguarding the peg between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand, the MPC decided to reduce the repo rate by 25 basis points to 7.675%. 6.75%, my apologies. We've decided to reduce the repo rate by 25 basis points to 6.75%. This decision was reached following a comprehensive review of current and expected domestic, regional, and global economic developments. Let us consider recent domestic economic developments. Domestic economic activity expanded further during 2024, but at a slower pace compared in 2023. Inflation remained well contained since the previous MPC meeting. Growth in private sector credit extension has modestly improved, albeit remaining subdued. The merchandise trade deficit widened further, and the stock of international reserves remains sufficient to maintain the currency peg and meet the country's international financial obligations. Activity in the domestic economy expanded further during 2024, albeit at a slower pace relative to 2023. The positive performance was primarily driven by the mining, electricity generation, wholesale and retail trade, tourism, communication and transport sectors, and the livestock marketing subsector. The diamond mining, diamond processing, and crop production subsectors, however, contracted during the period under review, while the construction sector remained subdued. The projections for gross domestic product have remained unchanged since the previous MPC meeting. Real GDP growth is projected to slow from 4.2% in 2023 to 3.5% in 2024 and rebound to 4% in 2025. Risks to the economic outlook have continued to gain prominence, especially in the wake of heightened trade wars. Other key external risks include geopolitical tensions, weaker global demand, and the delayed stabilization of the Chinese property market. Internally, adverse weather conditions, depressed diamond prices, and wood supply interruptions, particularly in coastal towns, continue to pose downside risks to the growth outlook, as do delays in the improvement of infrastructure. While domestic inflation decelerated in 2024 compared to 2023, it has ticked up since the last MPC meeting. Inflation averaged 4.2% during 2024 compared to 5.9% in 2023. The disinflationary trend was primarily driven by lower inflation in the food and transport categories. Since the last previous MPC meeting, however, inflation has on balance marginally increased to 3.2% in January 2025 from 3% in October 2024, attributable to food and transport price inflation. Looking ahead, inflation is projected to average 4% in 2025 and 4.4% in 2026. The 2026 forecast is 0.2 percentage point higher than the forecast at the previous MPC meeting, partly due to a marginally more depreciated exchange rate assumption. The annual growth in private sector credit extension rose most recently, despite remaining subdued overall. Since the last MPC meeting, PSC growth increased to 4% in December 2024 from 3.4% recorded in October 2024. Moreover, Private sector credit extension growth averaged 2.5% in 2024, a modest improvement compared to an average of 2.4% in 2023. The rise in PSC growth was evident in both the business and household sectors, particularly in the category of other loans, advances, and overdrafts. Namibia's merchandise trade deficit continued to deteriorate, reaching 42 billion Namibian dollars during 2024 from 31 billion Namibian dollars recorded in 2023. The widened trade deficit primarily reflected higher import payments, especially in the categories of consumer goods, machinery, and base metals. The decline in export earnings, notably from diamonds and uranium, further exacerbated the trade deficit. Since the previous MPC meeting, the exchange rate has depreciated moderately. The preliminary stock of international reserves stood at 65 billion Namibian dollars as at the 31st of January 2025, higher compared to the 60.9 billion Namibia dollars at the end of October 2024. The increase was mainly due to SACCO receipts and exchange rate depreciation. The latest level of reserves translates to an estimated import cover of 4.3 months, which is deemed adequate to sustain the currency peg between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand and meet the country's international financial obligations. Let's consider the key developments in the global economy that has informed our decision. The global economic recovery continued at a modest pace since the previous MPC meeting. Inflation, generally under control, edged higher in most monitored economies, while the monetary policy easing cycle continued across most of the monitored central banks. Since the last meeting, the global economy grew at a relatively stable but modest pace, with growth divergent across monitored economies. The United States registered a solid growth rate during the fourth quarter of 2024, albeit at a slower pace than in the preceding quarter. In the euro area, growth was stable over the same period, although it remained subdued. The Chinese economy expanded at a relatively robust rate, supported by a series of stimulus measures. Over the medium term, the International Monetary Fund, in its January 2025 World Economic Outlook update, has projected global growth to edge higher from an estimated 3.2% in 2024 to 3.3% in both 2025 and 2026. International prices of key commodities have diverged since the previous MPC meeting. Diamond prices continued the downward trajectory observed at the previous MPC meeting, reflecting weaker global demand and competition from lab-grown diamonds. The price of crude oil initially increased strongly, but has since declined, primarily attributed to potential oversupply from the United States. Uranium stored prices also declined, falling below $70 per pound, most recently due to increased global supply. Moreover, zinc prices exhibited a downward trend, mainly attributable to slowing demand from China. Conversely, the gold price edged higher since the last MPC meeting, driven by safe haven demand. Similarly, copper prices rose owing to concerns regarding tightening supply. Finally, wheat prices increased compared to the levels at the previous MPC meeting, mainly due to lower production in the Black Sea region. Since the last MPC meeting, global equity markets initially exhibited some volatility, especially following the US Federal Reserve's stance on its potential policy rate path. However, markets subsequently rallied, supported by increased investor confidence, strong earnings, and robust economic data from the United States. Bond yields increased in the key advanced economies, mainly on account of high inflation, changes to interest rate expectations, and concerns regarding fiscal sustainability in some countries. Conversely, bond yields in some of the monitored emerging markets and developing economies declined, consistent with reasonably contained inflation and easing monetary policy. Inflation has ticked up in most of the monitored economies since the previous MPC meeting. Consumer prices edged higher in all the key advanced economies, most notably in Japan and the euro area. Similarly, inflation increased in most of the monitored emerging market and developing economies, particularly in Russia, where inflationary pressures persisted. However, inflation decelerated in India during the period under review, essentially due to slowing food prices. Looking ahead, global inflation is projected to recede from an average of 5.8% in 2024 to 4.2% and 3.5% in 2025 and 2026, respectively. Most monitored central banks have continued to ease monetary policy, but in a gradual fashion, with expectations of rapid rate cuts diminishing. The US Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, and the South African Reserve Bank have all cut policy rates. In contrast, the central banks of Japan, Brazil, and Russia have continued to tighten policy rates, while the Bank of India and the People's Bank of China have kept their policy rates steady since the last MPC meeting. So what's our monetary policy stance? In determining the appropriate monetary policy stance, the MPC considered several factors in support of a rate cut. Why did we cut? These included the most recent slowdown in inflation and its projected well-contained trajectory over the medium term, the relatively high level of domestic real interest rates, and the adequate level of foreign reserves. Furthermore, the MPC considered orderly capital flows and the monetary policy easing trends among key central banks. The need for support to the economy was further underlined by recently released official data of the labor market by the NSA. The MPC remains cognizant of the margin between policy rates in Namibia and the younger countries of Africa and will aim to narrow the policy rate differential over the medium term. The committee is also mindful of the widening of the trade deficit, the impact of the imminent settling of international debt obligations in the country's international reserves holdings, as well as the increased level of global policy uncertainty. Against this background, the MPC decided to continue easing policy in a measured way by lowering the repo rate by a further 25 basis points to 6.75% with immediate effect. 4 members voted to reduce the repo rate, while 2 preferred to keep it unchanged. Commercial banks are accordingly expected to reduce the lending rates by 25 basis points, bringing the prime rate to 10.5%. The newly adopted policy stance will continue safeguarding the one-to-one link between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand while supporting domestic economic activity. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Governor. We'll now open the floor for questions. If there are any questions in the room, we have 2 microphones on either side of the room. Please make your way to those microphones. Remember to state your name, the organization that you represent, before you ask your question. Do we have any questions?
Excuse me, can I proceed?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Okay, Okhwane from Macrowatch. Just want to ask the governor, do you still believe Namibia is an attractive destination for exploration in light of the recent write-off by Shell and an assessment by Woodmac that commercial viability of oil extraction in Namibia may prove difficult? You did mention in previous MPC announcements that you were the central bank was building competence in terms of getting intelligence on oil and gas for Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there any other questions? Okay, I believe we have also received a question online. Josie, if I could just ask you to share it with us.
Thank you, Naufika. We have a question from Martin from the Namibian. He's asking, will Namibia be affected economically following the US President Donald Trump's executive order to freeze funding aid in various foreign countries?
Thank you, Josie. If there are no other questions in the room at this stage, sir, please go ahead, make your way to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Stephen. Given the kind of rocky relationship between the South African government and the US, which is likely to affect the trade or economic activities between the two, and we are directly in the firing line, how is that going to affect us, and what contingency plans perhaps does the bank have in place going forward? And the next question is, how does the central bank plan to adapt its monetary policy framework to remain effective in a rapidly changing economic environment? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think for now, Governor, we can tackle those questions.
Thank you very much for those questions. Let me start with the US questions about trade policies, tariffs, US-South African relations. You know, the best placed person actually for that question is Mirko to ask how is it going to affect Namibia. But if you want to know how it's going to impact the economy and the inflation, I'm happy to volunteer. But in terms of the broader picture, you are best placed to talk to Mirko about the implications thereof. What we need to do is we need to watch trade wars, and we need to watch exchange rate movements and see what the impact thereof is on the Namibian economy. Particularly the relationship between South Africa and the US will have profound impact on the Namibian economy. I understand that there are about 600 US companies doing business in South Africa. Those companies employ about 200,000 people in South Africa. The trade relations between South Africa and the US account for about 5% of the gross domestic product of South Africa. So it seems to me it's something that's quite significant. The impact thereof we'll probably see through the exchange rate, because our currency is pegged to the South African rand. So we need to watch what's happening with trade relations between South Africa and Namibia, and secondly, how it's impacting on the exchange rate that we have got. Our country is pegged to that. At this stage, you know, I haven't seen any policies being implemented. It's too early to tell. So what we need to do is to monitor the situation, stay close to that, so that we can see how does it fit into our inflation, our growth, how does it fit into SACU revenue in the next few years. So there's quite a lot of policy uncertainty, and that requires close monitoring. Is it going to affect the decision? How is it going to affect? Clearly, it's going to affect our health sector, but the Minister of Health says that the short term it won't. That's if he has been quoted correctly. But I personally, from what we are reading, see that quite a number of NGOs will be affected by the US decision to suspend aid to many countries for the next 90 days until they have done their own investigation. So the impact on some sectors will be adverse. So that's on the US, South Africa tariffs question. But if you need really how it's going to affect Namibia, talk to Mirko. They are best placed. They are the elected people for that. Is Namibia still an attractive destination? Of course it is. You know, when you do oil exploration, you never know. It's a high-risk game. The capital that's involved is significant amounts. And because one company has decided to write down $400 million of 300 million, whatever the amount is, doesn't say we have become unattractive overnight. So there's some exploration that's going on. When you explore, there's no guarantee that you're going to have commercial viability. So you need to do the work to get to that. So my take is that we remain an attractive destination. We have got political stability in the country. We have got what investors are looking for, policy certainty, we have got in the country. So as far as oil is concerned, that's the Orange Basin. There are also other basins that people are looking at. So my own take, yes, we are. At the Bank of Namibia, we are building capacity to further understand, or better understand the industry and what's commercially viable, what's not commercially viable. What we need to do as a nation is to lower our expectations. I think the hype was too high, right? So we need to lower our expectations and wait until we've got an FID decision, a final investment decision made by one of the oil majors that they're going to develop the fields. So that's on the oil question. Did I miss out? Any question?
No, Governor, you've addressed all of the questions. I believe we still have another question in the room. Shania, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Governor, and Happy New Year to everybody. My voice is a little bit, there's a flu going on in the country. So I just have a few questions, right? And I think I'm just going to add to what Ogone asked. We know, maybe I just want to understand, with now us just having a 25% chance of finding commercially viable oil, how did that play into our economic growth projections, if ever it was included when we were doing exploration to begin with? I also wanted to find out where we are currently standing in terms of the Welwitschia Fund. That's our favorite question. We always want to know. I also wanted to find out, Governor, amongst the sectors that are not performing very well, we saw the agriculture subsector, I want to believe. Now, seeing as we have been receiving quite wonderful rainfall, and we want to believe it's going to continue like that, was that put into consideration before we put those projections into economic growth? Also, 2 of the members voted against the rate cut. I really want to know why. Because our inflation has been going down quite, I want to believe, well. So we really want to understand why they believed it wasn't the best route to go. And lastly, how have you seen any significant changes in terms of bad debts and just general credit uptake in the country? And also seeing as though this is, I believe, the second rate cut, what is the end goal? What we want to finally see with all these rate cuts that we are doing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shania. I've noted 5 questions. I believe we still have 2 more. Yes, sir, please just make your way to the podium. Sir, go ahead with your question.
Good morning. I'm Alexander Mjebo from the Windhoek Observer. I just have one question, and the question goes like, the Bank of Namibia has recently announced the launch of a currency that will feature the late president, Dr. Hage. Now my question is, since now we have the founding president who sadly passed away, is the Bank of Namibia maybe going to come up with another currency that will feature him? And is the Bank of Namibia going to keep up with this tradition to the all head of states that we follow? I hope maybe my question makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't I take this? It's quite a lot, so let me deal with this. Shania, your questions are always good, so let me try and talk to the growth story before I get to oil and growth and whether we have taken that into account. I think we estimate growth around 3.5% in 2024. And in 2025, it's marginally going to be higher than the 3.5. We hope to do an update on our projections in March, April, and you'll get the latest in April as how we see growth in 2025. But in 2024, we estimate Namibian growth at 3.5. And in 2025, 2025, slightly above that. So where do we see that growth in 2025? It's going to be a little bit higher than 2024. It's mainly going to be supported by the mining sector outside the diamonds. We see positive sentiment in the non-diamond mining sector, particularly in the gold mine and uranium mining sector. We see normalization of tourism that's going to contribute to growth in the country. Logistics, particularly with the new operator, the port in Walvis Bay, we expect that's going to put up. The transport sector is expected to grow positively in 2025. And then we also see, Shania, construction of 3 mines in the country that will contribute to that. We have got the Bannerman Tango mine to commence production in 2027 and expected to produce uranium of about 3.5 million pounds per annum. We have got the Deep Jello Tumas mine, uranium also, and we've got the Twin Hills gold mine. So those are the 3 mines that we think is going to contribute outside the diamond sector. Following the welcome rains, the agri-sector is also expected to improve in 2025. So we have not accounted and taken oil exploration to contribute to growth in 2025. It's early days. Until we've got a final investment decision made, until we have got one of the oil fields developed and will produce, it will be premature of us to include that into our numbers. So we have not included oil into our growth projections. Second one is Welwitschia Fund. So I knew that was coming. So we said, come October or November 2025, we need to have about 500 million USD in the sinking fund that we've set up. So we set up a sinking fund, and that fund, as we have got now 420 million, if I'm not mistaken, about US dollars. So we still need about 80 million US dollars to go till November. We have got no doubt that we'll have the 500 million USD come November. So all we really need to do is to decide what do we do with the remaining 250. Do we roll it over? Do we refinance it in the local market? And it's going to be largely a pricing issue. So we need to think about where do we get the best price. That's on the Welwitschia Fund. 2 members voted. Why have they have probably 3 key reasons. The first one is there's so much policy uncertainty, Shania, now. If you see, globally, there is, you could see a lot of fragmentation. You could see trade wars coming up. So that could impact us as an exporter of commodities in the country. So there is significant, enormous policy uncertainty. And the 2 members felt, why don't we get clarity there before we really decide whether we're going to reduce or not? The second one, they think that the reserves position in 2025, remember we used to get SACU revenue of about 28 billion this year, and that number is going to be significantly lower to around 21 billion in 2025. In November, we're also going to redeem the Eurobond. So should we rather not pause this whole thing? So that's the second argument that they had. And thirdly, they said, although inflation is coming down, price levels still remain high, right? If you go to the shops, you don't feel actually that inflation is coming down. So those 2 members felt for those 3 reasons, why don't we just keep it unchanged? But the 4 other colleagues said what we have stated in the over there is, we see no signs of demand inflation in the economy. Price levels remain elevated despite the disinflation. Credit extension is so low that we have got. So, and you ask, where do we see the end point? Where is it going to be end point? So maybe if we can get to around 2% positive about inflation, so if you get a repo of about 6.5%, we'll probably get into neutral territory. That's what we are looking at this stage. So now with this, we've got repo of 6.75. So neutral rate, we don't target anything, but if you really ask my opinion, that will probably the area that we are looking at. Have we covered the ground? Bad debts, NPLs, so we don't see any signs of NPLs getting above 6%, so it's still below the 6% threshold that we have got. commemorative note that we have got, this is not going to be the first one. So we had, when the Bank of Namibia became in 20 years anniversary of the Bank of Namibia, we had a commemorative coin where we had the founding father on the front of that, on the $10 coin. So, and then the first note was actually when we came up where we have got the 3 presidents on a polymer substrate. So that's the second one that we did. So over a 30-year period, we only did 1 coin, and we only did 1 banknote. So that would have been the second one. So we continue, we have clearly stopped that in respect of the founding president that we have lost. So it's not something that you do lightly. So it's commemorative, but it's going to be circulating. It could have been legal tender. So if you think that we're going to just do commemorative banknotes for the sake of doing that, that's not the purpose. We thought here there's a very good reason that we'll explain when the day comes why we are doing that. So please join us when we launch that, and we'll explain why we are doing that actually. Where have you covered the ground, or is there anything?
The ground, Governor, yes. So we'll take a final round of questions. If there are any final questions in the room.
Thank you.
Governor, we have one more online question. It says here, Governor mentioned something of reducing the interest rate differential between Namibia and SA in the medium term. Should we expect an increase in the future? Question 2 is, over 2025, due to the differential, how much capital has flown to South Africa? Those are the 2 questions we received online.
Yeah. So the reason, let me take that one, because that one is, everybody is asking me that question. Over the medium term, the reason why you have got the differential is because the Namibian economy needs support. You see the inflation coming down. You look private credit extension so low. There's no demand. Inflation that we see in the economy. We see unemployment. I'm wondering why you haven't asked me a question around unemployment. This economy needs support. So that's why you have got this differential. But ideally, when you fix your peg to another country, or you have got the peg arrangement like we have got in South Africa, the ideal situation is that the interest rate should be the same. So the reason why it's different is an effort on the part of the Bank of Namibia to support the local economy, because we don't see inflation being a big challenge. We see the reserves levels at an appropriate level, or adequate level. So that's why you will see that. So we hope over time that we'll close that. We cannot tell you now that we're going to do that in 3 months, 6 months, because in terms of our decision making, it's very data-driven. It's from meeting to meeting. We look at all economic data. We look at all financial data. We look at all the risk that we have got, and based on that, we take a decision. The target is really to try and keep the rates aligned. Hopefully, that answers your question.
Given the current development in the diamond sector, we are looking at declining sales, declining demand, and maybe a speaker under correction, given that diamond still contributes significantly to Namibia's economy. Do you think it's time to perhaps advise the government on expenditure, or what strategy do you have going forward, looking at probably we are going to be having a significant decline in revenue to the GDP, or earning from the exports of diamonds? Thank you.
Right, so that's another good question that we have got. Diamonds are very important for our country in terms of revenue for our country, but the diamond industry is going through a very difficult time, not only in Namibia, it's throughout the world. And it's on the back of 3 things. One, the demand for diamonds from the big markets, US and China, has declined. So that's the first reason. The second big reason that we have got is that you have got severe competition from lab-grown diamonds. And you are so right that year on year, the prices of diamonds have reduced from about $465 per carat to about $325 per carat. So what we need to do, it's going to have an adverse impact on government revenue. It's going to have adverse impact on government spending as well. So, but luckily in our case, what we are seeing is there's some trade-off coming through from the non-diamond mining side. So uranium is picking up nicely, gold is picking up nicely, and zinc is also assisting, but particular gold and uranium is picking up. From an advice point of view, it's probably time to diversify, not to put everything into one basket. So what we need to do is make sure we've got a diversified mining sector, which we have in the country. Diamonds play a bigger role currently, but what we need to do is maybe diversify our economy. Have we covered the ground?
Just a brief follow-up, Governor. I think the Mshanya's question referred to the Welwitschia Sovereign Wealth Fund. I think you were alluding to the Eurobond, the settlement of the Eurobond. If I were to understand her correctly,
okay. So the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So Sovereign Wealth Fund. Let me get the figures. So those figures are very close, right? So. Digidan, you have got the figures for Sovereign Wealth Fund. Okay.
Thank Governor and the members of the media. So in terms of the latest balance for the Welwitschia Fund, currently that sits at around 453 million Namibian dollars. It's around 24. Sorry, the mic is acting. Thank you.
So how's the performance like? Is the performance within our benchmark, or is it above benchmark?
We mentioned in the MPC statement, on average around 18%.
1.8. My apologies, Shania. So 4.53 million Namibian dollars. Year-to-date performance since we started is 180%. So.
Thank you very much. There's one more question online, Josie.
Sorry, there's an incoming list of questions here. But there's one question from Kasuto from The Brief. He's asking that he has observed that there are many fraudulent activities occurring within our commercial banks in Namibia. What measures has the Bank of Namibia put in place to minimize this fraud, as a lot of Namibians are losing their money and no one is being held accountable?
Digidan, would you want to take that question?
Thank you very much. The Bank of Namibia is closely collaborating with the banking sector to make sure that we deploy implementable solutions to address the fraud that we've been witnessing. First and foremost, we are leveraging technology to enable immediate pickup and address of the fraud. Secondly, to really educate users of financial services to be very careful to avail any person with personal details. So a lot of public awareness going in to make sure we protect vulnerable clientele, and also making sure that on a continuous basis we share information around fraudulent activities so that the patterns are known, the involved parties and actors are known with all the entire banking sector. When it pertains cyber-related incidents, through the Cybersecurity Council and its working group, there's also a lot of information sharing happening to make sure everybody learns from incidents and make sure that we raise our buffers of protection to prevent further incidents from occurring. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, Governor. We've now come to the end of our Q&A session. Can we please give the Governor and the MPC members a round of applause? With that, we have now come to the end of our proceedings. On behalf of all of us at the Bank of Namibia, thank you for your attendance and your participation. For those of you joining us in the room, let's continue the conversation outside. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Supervising commercial banks. The Bank of Namibia monitors the national payment and settlement system to make sure that our transactions are safe, legal, cost-effective, and timely. The bank also facilitates payments between people as they transact through various commercial banks. The bank ensures a stable supply of good quality banknotes and coins within the country. The Bank of Namibia makes sure that prices of goods and services in the economy do not increase too quickly, keeping the value of the Namibian dollar stable, whether it is in your pocket or bank. The Bank of Namibia provides banking services to commercial banks and government. As banker to the government, the bank is responsible for processing government payments domestically and internationally. The bank also manages Namibia's foreign reserves, allowing us to pay for imports. The Bank of Namibia is responsible for the regulation of inflow and outflow of foreign currency. This assists in the overall management of foreign reserves. The Bank of Namibia fulfills these functions to support economic growth and development. What does the Bank of Namibia do for you and Namibia? Also known as the Central Bank of Namibia, the bank makes sure that banking and financial institutions under its supervision are safe, sound, and able to withstand any shocks. One of the ways the bank does this is by supervising commercial banks. The Bank of Namibia monitors the national payment and settlement system to make sure that our transactions are safe, legal, cost-effective, and timely. The bank also facilitates payments between people as they transact through various commercial banks. The bank ensures a stable supply of good quality banknotes and coins within the country. The Bank of Namibia